it's Charles Thorman from Noble Gold Investments. We're here on Lynn Liaz's channel, the first and only company to have a depository for your precious metals for IRAs in Texas. Wanted to take a moment to talk about what's going on and explain why this is a great time for you to get protected with precious metals. With everything that's going on in the nation, it makes sense more now than ever. We see wildfires, hurricanes, earthquakes. Times have never looked more closer to the end times than now. And with what's going on in the economy and politics, it makes sense to get that protection that precious metals offers. Give us a call. We're here to help. Any questions you may have, we can help you through the process, whether it be for metals to be delivered to you, metals to be stored for you, or even metals for your IRAs. We can help you with that process. So give us a visit on our website, noblegoldinvestments.com, or give us a call. Be more than happy to help and answer all your questions.
Hi, this is Lynn Liaz, and I have author and researcher and expert, most known for his work on the Nephilim, L.A. Marzulli, with me today. Hi, L.A. How are you doing?
Great to be here, Lynn. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Well, it is great to have you, and we're going to talk about your new film that was just released a month ago, Fatima, Miracle of the Sun, or A Harbinger of Deception. And I'm so excited to talk about it and find out more about it. Very exciting. You've had scholars, theologians, researchers, historians, and more present the facts and present their research, mostly from the 1917 original documents and the interrogations that were done at the time from witnesses who were present back in 1917 at this huge event. So you've certainly done your homework here on this film. So
thank you.
What inspired you to do this?
Well, we were actually in the middle of production on another film. There's a series, and The Watchmen Chronicles is the overarching title of a new series, The Watchmen Chronicles. And the first was, in their own words, UFOs are real. So the second film I was working on was In Their Own Words, or In Their Own Words, Angels and Demons. And we had already gone into the field and talked to a lot of people who had encounters, both angelic encounters and demonic encounters. So we were excited about that film. And it's early in the morning, and I get the little tap on the shoulder from the Spirit of a Living God. One word. He says, Fatima. And I just kind of go, oh my gosh. And then it just popped into my head that it's the 100th anniversary of Fatima. And I walked to where my wife Peggy was, and I said, we're going to Portugal. We're going to Fatima. And that's how the whole thing came about. I've been a student of the Fatima apparitions for ages, for decades. Even before I was a Christian, I was very sort of drawn to the whole mystique of the Fatima apparitions and other apparitions all over the world. And I, as a Christian now, born again and spirit-filled Christian, I look, and an evangelical, obviously, I look back at all this and from a whole different perspective. But originally the film was called Fatima, Mary of the Bible, or A Harbinger of Deception. And as we talked off the air, when we got to the sanctuary, which again, and I've said this over and over and over again, there's nothing like boots on the ground when you're actually at a site and looking and feeling the wind and smelling the aroma in the air and listening to the different languages all around you and everything else that goes with actually being in a place. And Fatima was no different. It's a huge area. It can fit 1 million people at one time. And it's dialed in. I mean, they've got hidden speakers. And so you walk down this path and there's all these beautiful pine trees and you're in this like, tended, manicured pine forest. And finally, and we show this little segment of it as we're coming around. And there's the whole sanctuary. And in the distance, there's a very large cross and a set of rosaries. And on the other side is the huge basilica, which has reminiscent of the Vatican architecture. Again, it can fit like 1 million people. And then in between that is the actual apparition site where the original chapel was built. So when we got there, what we saw, a very dialed in sanctuary, and was very emotional. But I wasn't going to buy into that. I'm like looking like what's happening here. And they have this one place where people buy candles and they just throw the candles into this huge oven. So it smells like melting wax is sort of wafting through the air. But the following day, we got there and we set up a trip so we would be there on one of the apparition sites I don't want to use the word holiday, but the apparition, the entity, appeared on the 13th of the month from May to October. We were there on July 13th. And we get there, and they are moving this 4-foot statue of Mary on a bed of roses, and these 4 pallbearers are marching through the sanctuary. There are thousands of people with handkerchiefs out, and I'll do a little demo here, with handkerchiefs out, waving to the statue like this. And it's just, I looked at my wife and I said, we can't go there. We're taking Mary off the table. And in the beginning of the film, there's actually a disclaimer. So, and it basically says this: millions of pilgrims visit Fatima every year. Millions of Muslims march around the Kaaba stone. Millions of Hindus celebrate Guru Puja. Millions of Buddhists attend thousands of temples all over Asia and worship. So we're not here to disparage anyone's belief system. People have the right to believe what they want to believe. So we're not attacking, the apparition or what it was or what it wasn't. That's off the table, at least in film number 1. What we did focus on was the event known as the Miracle of the Sun. And it's a misnomer. That's the first thing we need to understand, that a newspaper reporter from a newspaper called O Seculo, which means the century, after the apparition happened, after this thing happened on October 13th, this event, he wrote Miracle of the Sun. And this has been repeated for literally 100 years. So people, when you say Miracle of the Sun, they just assume that it was a sun miracle. But when you start peeling back the layers of the onion and get into what actually happened, and in my opinion, it's a whole different scenario. It's a whole different framework, paradigm that is at work here. First of all, I want to address the sun. The sun did not move from the solar system and come to Earth and fly over the crowd. That's not what happened. And in 1917, Lynn, there are no airplanes in Portugal. Nada. Zippo. Now, there might be 1 or 2 in Lisbon, but that's it. Most people have never seen an airplane or any type of aerial craft at all. So, I mean, it's hard for us to get our heads around that. Most people are illiterate. Many people are illiterate. So education, it's 1917, it's 100 years ago. The roads are dirt. It's a small little village out of the way. It was called Cova de Iria, which means the Cove of Irene. Since then it's been, changed the name to Fatima, whatever. But originally it was the Cove of Irene. And so the peasants, the people, are unlearned. I mean, they're illiterate. And the sun, which is the size of a watermelon, and in comparison, the Earth would be the size of a head of a match. Okay? The sun did not leave its solar system. This was a local event that people could see from miles away, 50, 100 miles away, but they saw something. But it was not a global phenomenon that the people, let's say in France or Washington, D.C., the sun did not move out of its place in the sky. What happened, according to the witnesses, and we get into this in great specificity in the film, it had been raining all day. So there's 70,000 people gathered in the field. Why? Because in September, the magistrate, the mayor, the priest, all got together and told the kids, and there are 3 seers. Lucia was 10, Francisco was 9, and Jacinta was 7. Very, very young children. And this has been going on since May. So now it's September, and they go and they say, ask the entity to show us a sign. So they do. They go back and ask the entity, the lady, they want to see a sign. And so the entity says, in October, the next month, there will be a sign. So word gets out. Now, in the first apparition in May, it was just the 3 kids. And then in June, there was a handful of followers. So by July, there's like 30,000 people. Fast forward to October, once word gets out that there's going to be a sign, some sort of a sign that's going to appear, 70,000, upwards of 70,000 people are gathered in the field at Fatima. And we show pictures, real pictures from the event, black and white. It's a sea of umbrellas. So it's raining all morning. People are soaked to the bone, All of a sudden, the clouds part, and there's the sun. Everybody's, hooray, this has stopped raining. But then something that's really strange happens. A cloud moves in front of the sun, and from the cloud comes a dull silver disc. I'm just going to use this as a prop. And it begins to spin. The thing begins to spin like this and then fall like in a leaf-like pattern, and go down. And it does this 3 times before it does what we call the flyby, where it passes over the crowd like this, less than 100 feet over the crowd's heads. That's not the sun. If it was the sun, we wouldn't be here. The whole earth would be incinerated. The universe would go into chaos. So we have to agree first that it wasn't the sun as we know it. But something did happen, and it was supernatural in my opinion. And there's phenomena that happen with the so-called miracle of the sun that, and this is what the second film is about, we really get into it. For instance, people that were there when the flyby happened, their clothes were dried instantly. The ground was dried instantly. Some of these people had burns on their skin, on their faces. Others heard a buzzing noise in their head. The entity only communicated telepathically to the children, and only the children could see this entity. And by the way, Lucia never said it was the Mary of the Bible. And you go back on 1917 records, it's not there. Now, people can tap dance around that all they want, but she never says it's Mary. The entity, when asked, where are you from? She said, I'm from the sky. That's what she said. We also discovered that there was a full-blown matriarchal society in the pre-Christian, pre-Roman era. So this goes back thousands of years where goddess worship was all throughout the area. And there was this one goddess who was probably a Celtic goddess by the name of Mora, who would seduce men and then kill them. And the priests that served her, apparently, were all castrated. So we're looking at some really, really funky stuff, supernaturally, spiritually, that was in place. And then when the Romans came in, they brought Diana worship. And again, people don't know this. And it's hard to like, you know, the 21st century mindset to go back into antiquity and realize that there was this huge temple dedicated to this goddess, all right, which in my opinion was a fallen angel masquerading in the feminine. But it was a transgendered interdimensional entity. Let me explain. There are no female angels. But fallen angels, there's a word that Russ Dizdar taught me in the Greek, metaschizmatisai, the ability to change and alter their appearance. We know this from Scripture where it says Satan himself can appear as an angel of light. We know that. So Diana has breasts, and in some of these sculptures that we see of Diana, she's got multiple breasts. But in others, and some of the earlier ones, and Gary Stearman is credited for helping me with this, while she has breasts, right underneath her are sets of testicles, 3 sets of testicles. So she's this weird, hermaphroditic, transgendered abomination, in my opinion. It's just off the charts. And that's in the Roman era. So all this just, and we talked to an anthropologist who's going to be sort of featured in the second installment, Fatima 2. And he talks about a serpent cult. He talks about ancient goddess worship well before the Romans that was in place. And this goddess worship has never really been deposed. When Christianity came into the area, like in a lot of places, specifically you can look in Mexico, there's an amalgamation of the ancient occultic religion alongside Christianity. So, it's extremely interesting. And we uncovered all of that in the film.
Wow, it certainly sounds extremely interesting. I know Fatima, I've heard about it for so many years, and people are just always interested in what really happened. There's always so many questions and so many different answers about it. So this certainly sounds like something that I think everyone should see. And it's mind-blowing to think about all these crazy things surrounding Fatima. And how can people get your film?
There's 2 ways. One is just to go to the main site, lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net. And thank you for supporting us, because when you buy the film, that helps us to make the next film. That's how it works. So we can't give it away for free, even though I would like to. And the other place you can go is the Watchman Chronicles, thewatchmanchronicles.com. thewatchmanchronicles.com, singular, thewatchmanchronicles.com. You can order from there. We're going to try to put it up on Vimeo over the weekend, and that's L.A. Marzulli, so you'll be able to rent it on Vimeo also. So 3 ways to watch the film. I promise you, you'll walk, and we've had nothing but incredible feedback from everybody who's watched the film. We had a man who was actually studying 3 years of seminary to become a priest, and he watched the film and he said, L.A., thank you so much for your work, for exposing a deception that's out there. Everybody who's watched the film, and people they invite their neighbors and friends and everything else. So one guy buys it, but then 10 people watch it, and that's fine. It's great. But you can invite your neighbors and friends or whatever, and people get educated. People realize that the official narrative, there are 2 Fatimas. There's the Fatima that we all think we know, and then there's the 1917 documents from the witnesses, handwritten documents, witness testimonies, which completely differ than the official story. Let me address one point real quick, because I know we don't have much time, that many people, and I know Bill Salas drank the Kool-Aid on this, as everyone does, because unless you go in and really study it, the third secret of Fatima, the first and second secret of Fatima, these so-called secrets are a confabulation. Let me explain why we believe that. In 1917, and this is why the 1917 documents are the only documents we go to. That's it. What the actual witness testimonies from 1917, the handwritten documents, which were presented in 23 to the bishop from Father Fiera. But the handwritten ones are all from 1917. Lucia, who is the main seer, she's only 10 years old, never mentions Russia. It's not there. She never mentions Russia. Now, what most people don't understand is Lucia, 6 years later, when she's 16, she's hustled off to a convent, given a gag order, a vow of silence, essentially. She's cloistered, kept away from everybody, including her family, with a vow of silence. And then in 1928, a full 11 years after the event, that's when she writes the so-called secrets. And that's when it gets into Russia being consecrated to Mary's Sacred Heart, which, of course, the whole thing is dressed up, with all due respect, in Catholic clothes. And what most people don't get, 1917 was extremely volatile. You had the Balfour Declaration, which was being floated in the halls of Parliament in Great Britain, which would eventually lead to the State of Israel, which has great prophetic implications. And don't think for a moment that the fallen cherub, the god of this world, Satan, isn't noticing that and looking for that. And of course, right in tandem with that, he raises up his Antichrist for the moment, which of course is Adolf Hitler, who wipes out 6 million of them. And from the ashes of the Holocaust, the birth of Israel actually happens. But at the same year in 1917, the Bolsheviks are taking power in Russia, and the Tsar is overthrown. So everything is in absolute turmoil. Plus World War I is raging. So 11 years later, the threat of communism is now a global threat. It really is. And people are, it's only 1928. Think about it. When Hitler came to power, he did 2 things. He blamed everything either on the Jews or the communists. So I'm not, in my opinion, these first and second, secrets that were supposedly revealed to Lucia are complete confabulations. They're made up, and she was handled. Now that's conjecture on my part. It's free speech. As long as I have free speech, I'm allowed to say things like this. But all the evidence points to the fact that she's being handled, she's being managed. And I got this off a Catholic website that talks about Fatima. And there's a whole timeline with Lucia. And the secrets do not come out till 1928. So that's a dynamic which we may or may not touch in the second film. We certainly didn't get that into the first film. But it's extremely interesting. And the reason why we call it a harbinger of deception is because if it was a UFO, think about it, 70,000 people, their paradigm was absolutely rocked, was changed in that field that day. What will you do? What will people do in modernity, in the present day, if we see a mile-wide craft appear and just show up? And this is why I call it a harbinger of deception. It was not the sun, it was an object which came over the crowd. and there were other phenomenon that happened with that object as it did what we call the flyby. So it's a very, very complex subject.
We know that the Bible even tells us in Ephesians 6:10 through 20, it talks about principalities and powers and rulers of the darkness of this age and spiritual host of wickedness in the heavenly places. And
Bingo.
we know that this UFO activity is demonic. At least that's what I believe. And
I do too. You know that, sure.
you know, I never heard the thing you mentioned about the entity having multiple breasts and being transgender and so forth. I had never heard about that, and that's just crazy. You know, that these things are going on. And I know for those of you listening out there, some of you probably find this stuff fanatic maybe, or sounds hard to believe, but these things really are true. You know, there is a whole world, there is a whole spirit world and a demonic spirit world out there. The Bible tells us so. We need to know about these things because we are in the end times, and we are going to be deceived if we do not stay close to Jesus Christ, and also know about what's going on and know about these deceptions, because if we don't know about it, we could easily be deceived.
I couldn't agree with you more. Well said, Lynn. Very well said. And folks, if you have doubts about what I'm saying, I challenge you right now to go to Google and Google Diana of Ephesus and click images and look at the images. I dare you to do that.
And I double dog dare you. So go do it. Go take a look. Well,
I triple dog dare you.
I do want to remind everyone, you can go look at this for yourself and get a copy of it. And that is at L.A. Marzulli's website. And it is L.A. Marzulli, that's LAMARZULLI.wordpress.com. And I will have the link below the video in the information section. I will also post it on the video itself here on the screen, but you won't be able to click that link. You'll have to click the one below the video. So I urge everyone out there to increase your knowledge so that you do not become deceived by something. We are in the end times. There is no doubt about that. And check out this film because it is very, very interesting. And everything is backed up with a lot of research. And as I mentioned earlier on in this interview, he's got researchers, theologians, historians, people with PhDs, and more who have also researched this and present the facts as well. So everything is backed up. So, L.A., do you have any final thoughts or words that you want to share with the viewers before we end this program?
I will be speaking at the Prophecy Watchers Conference next Friday night on October 13th, literally the 100th year anniversary. And I will be presenting my research on Fatima. I've got basically, I think, 50 minutes to present. And I'll have clips from the film, lots of pictures, lots of stuff, and we'll just really get into it there. So if you want to, you can live stream that. Go to my blog, lamarzulli.wordpress.com, and just click that banner, and you can sign up for live streaming, and you can watch the presentation. But I would just, again, Lynn, people, I would just ask you, your listeners, if they can afford it, to please sow into what we do here, believe in what we do, partner with us. Dare I use those words? Because when you buy the film, that helps us do the next one. And we're out in the field. We're not in the library. The library's good for a point, but we're out in the field looking at stuff, talking to people. And one more thing, the DNA evidence from the elongated Paracas skulls is cooking at 2 different labs. We should have results fairly soon. And when we do, I'd love to come back on and talk about that.
So thank you so much, LA. And again, for those of you out there, the link will be below this video. It is lamarzulli.wordpress.com. I encourage all of you to check out his film. And again, it was just released a month ago. Fatima, Miracle of the Sun, or A Harbinger of Deception.